Well, good morning, guys, and welcome back to the channel. Now, it's been a couple of weeks since I last did the 20 things to try with pellets video. That was a really good video. It's gone really well, so thanks everyone who watched that and liked it. But obviously with the lockdown and stuff, it's just been a bit of a funny time. With work, I've not been actually allowed to go out. We sort of, stuck to the rules and stayed in and did everything I could from home. But what it has done, it meant that I couldn't go out filming. But what it did do, it meant I could go out, and I did quite a bit of pleasure fishing. Saturday, Sundays, I've been going out chub fishing, just really local. And I've just been literally taking a rod and a little bag with a few bits in and catching loads of chub. In fact, I've had 31 chub now out of this small stretch of river. And it's been brilliant. And I've had so many messages. Whenever I've put a picture of a fish on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, I've had so many messages from you guys asking to do a video on it. And it was a little bit awkward because there's a couple of reasons for this. Firstly, I don't want to give the game away on the venue. I don't think it's fair because it's such a small river. And you've all got these rivers near you, but it's such a small river. The last thing I want, or the locals want, is a load of pressure on the venue. Them little venues can't take it. So with respect, I'm not going to tell you where I've been fishing, but I am going to give you a few pointers into, finding a nice little venue to target. So what I've been doing, basically, I wanted to set myself a bit of a target to catch a 5 lb chub out of this little river. There's loads of them in there. Not 5 pounders, I hasten to add. There's loads of chub in there, sort of 2 to 4 pound. They're mostly about 2 to 3 pound, to be honest with you. There's a few small ones when there's a bit of colour in the river. You catch some small ones, but largely they're sort of 2 to 3 pound. Lovely fish, immaculate fish. They're just beautiful. But there are some big ones as well if you can find them, and location is everything. I'll talk more about that in detail. But finding them, and there is some fish to catch, and it culminated in me catching my target fish. So yeah, it's been a total like education for me, this chub fishing, because I just thought I'd go along with a loaf of bread and just catch every chub in the river. And to be fair, like I said, I've done well. I've caught a lot of chub, but I've had to tweak my tackle along the way, which is brilliant because obviously I'm a match angler at heart. I'm always looking to perfect things and tweaking my kit for this, even though it's such a simple style. Tweaking my kit has led me to catching loads of fish. So first point is location. It is everything. And Google Earth or Google Maps or maps on your phone or whatever you've got is your friend. Find your local river. Look for a backwater or a small section of river, somewhere that's small. You want small. I think, based on what I've learned, that you want small venues. The reason is because the fish are never too far away. If you went on a really big river, I don't know, the Middle Trent or something like that, and tried to find some chub using these roving tactics, you might be struggling. However, on these small intimate venues, the fish aren't ever going to be too far away from you. So get on Google Maps or Google Earth. Google Earth is what I use. Look for your house on it, and then look for rivers around you. And generally, in my experience, like a lot of the smaller venues are free fishing, as long as there's access. Obviously check on that first. Check for like farmers access. Look for gate entries and stuff like that. And public footpaths. There's often public footpaths along the river. Just look for things like that. And if there is a controlling club, obviously join it. I've just joined one to get into some new water. Now I've done this target, I want to move on to another target, but we'll talk about that in a bit. But yeah, either check for controlling clubs of the river, or check for farmers, allowing fishing, things like that, because they don't all allow it, but a lot of them do, because at the end of the day, you're not doing any harm. So Google Earth is your friend. I've been looking, and I've spent hours looking for stretches of river, and I found one which is just an absolute dream. I got a tip off by another angler as well. I won't mention who. And he told me, point me in the right direction, but then it's been a case of actually finding the fish once I've been pointed in the right direction. So you'll all have somewhere close to you where this relates to small, intimate rivers that have got some chub in. That's the first thing. And then once I found the spot, I look on Google Earth, and it gives you a head start. The reason is what I mean. There's so many good on this particular stretch of river I'm fishing. Every single swim looks like it's going to be good. They all look brilliant. But as I've been now, I've probably had 7 or 8 sessions, maybe a few more. I can't remember. But as I've gone along, I've spotted, and you get an eye for it. And I watched a video with the Angling Direct guys, and they said you get an eye for a good chub swim, and that is what's developed with me now over this sort of stretch that I've been doing, this sort of 8 to 10 session stretch. You get an eye for it. And one thing I will say is, get on Google Earth and give yourself a picture of what you're looking at before you go, because it's everything, and you know where you're heading before you even start, within reason. So once I've got my spot, I've got my permission to fish, you know, I know where I'm going to fish, I've sorted out access, because it's little things like parking your car and parking your van, you know, a lot of these places you've got a long walk before you even get to the river. And in this case where I'm going, that is the case. You know, you've got a long walk to some of these pegs, a couple of miles in cases. So you've got to be confident that where you're parking is legit. You can leave your van there, you can do it with, so suss that out as well. Get on Google Maps, find somewhere that is going to be good for parking, because that is a big thing as well. So that's all the boring stuff out of the way. So this stretch of river that I've been fishing is very, very typical. You've got fast runs, you've got deep, slow runs, you've got bends, you've got trees, you've got everything you could want as a chub angler. There's something to explore. One thing that I've found is the really obvious pegs are difficult. There's some pegs that just look, if you could write a textbook on chub fishing, these pegs would be in it. Big bushes, rafts that have formed over the autumn, where all the dead reeds and stuff have like flown into it when the river's been up. But because they do look so good, I've noticed they get a lot of pressure. And I'm not saying there isn't any fish under there, but I have not caught any. And I've tried lots of times now, and I've just given up, because I think there might be a big one lurking under there, but the juice ain't worth the squeeze for me at the minute, because I'm only going for hour-long sessions. That's all I'm doing, and I know that I would have to fish into dark and probably bait and wait a little bit on them swims. But what it's done, it's allowed me to formulate a plan, because basically the bit I'm fishing, there's a stretch where it gets a lot of dog walkers and a lot of people, and then there's a stretch that's out into the countryside. And in the countryside and the bit where the people walk, you couldn't be more different in terms of the fishing. The bit in the countryside is very wild. It's just no pressure on the venue, no pressure on the fish. So if you get a piece of bread in the right place, you get a bite. That's just how it is. Whereas in the bit where the people walk, and it's clear that people fish it on a fairly regular basis. I'm not saying it gets hammered, but the people do fish it. You can tell the fish are more switched on. They're used to seeing anglers bait. They're used to seeing the pressure of angling, and the fish are under pressure. They're on edge. So it almost needs two different tactics, and this is where I've come to with it. So out in the countryside bit, the wild bits that don't get any pressure, a simple link ledger with a piece of flake on or whatever, in the right place, will get you a bite every single time. You know, within reason. You normally get one. What we found is you get one bite per swim. And if you hook that fish, then brilliant. If not, then, you know, you've got to start again, maybe move downstream a little bit. Whereas on the bit that's more populated, as in, you know, it gets fished a lot more, actually feeding the swim and then coming back to it is better. So that's just to give you my sort of mindset. Where the fish aren't used to seeing bait and they're a bit more, they're obviously hungry, they want a feed, just chuck in, almost dobbing for them. You know, you're flicking your little bit of bread in and you're going to catch one. However, in the busiest stretch, a bit more bait and waiting is required. So the swims I've sort of been looking for, and it's really caught me out, it's really caught me out. So there's loads of fast ones and stuff like that. However, the fast ones, they're okay, but I think now the water's cooling down, you're only ever going to catch small chub there. Don't get me wrong, it's great to get some bites, but what I'm looking for is steady glides is basically the best way to describe it. If it's a steady glide of 20-30 metres running onto a tree, that is the ultimate. Even pace. So you want a bit of pace. They definitely like a bit of pace, these chub, but it wants to be a steady, even glide down to a bush, and that is just like the best. Short, tight little swims don't seem to have been productive. They look great, you know, you've got overhanging trees and that, but I just don't think it's right. You basically want a longish glide, bit of pace, down to a feature, and that is where the chub are. Now, the one thing that I wasn't prepared for was how good straights were. And by this I mean boring, featureless straights that you walk past. And And this is particularly the case for them big chub. And this is what's led me to catching this 5 pound target fish that I've been after. I've been, like I said, I've been going lots of times. You know, I've been most weekends, like hour sessions. I've had odd day off here and there and gone fishing. And I must have walked past where I found the fish, the big uns. I must have walked past that a dozen times now and not even giving it a second thought. Basically, where I found the big fish is a long straight of probably 100 metres. It's just reeds either side, not even like reeds in the water or anything, but it's a good depth. It's probably 5 to 6 foot. And it's a dead even flow. And I don't know whether it's angler pressure on the good looking pegs that push the fish into these straights or what, or whether it's just food's there or there's snags on the bottom. There's something there that they like. And the amount of times that just lately, I can't fail. I've had strings of 4-pounders there. I've had my 5-pounder, 5-pound 2-ounce fish. And I've had 3-pounders there. I've had big roach there. And for whatever reason, this boring straight that you just walk past every single day of the week holds the fish at the moment. So that's something to bear in mind. Even on, you know, a nice venue where there's snags and features aplenty, don't ever ignore a boring straight. As long as it's got a good depth and a nice even flow, I think there'll be chub there, especially on your local river. So moving on. So that's a little bit about location. Like I say, Google Earth is your friend, Google Maps is your friend. Get on there, have a little look on your local venue, find some spots and go about it. So what do I take with me? I take a rod. In this for my venue that I've been fishing, a 10-footer is perfect. I use a Supera with a 1-ounce tip in it, 5-pound line. Just simple stuff, same sort of stuff you'd use on a commercial fishery. I have a telescopic landing net handle. I think that's really important to me because you do need a 3-metre handle because a lot of the banks are quite awkward. You know, you can be sat quite a way back. And the last thing you want, my partner in crime, Rob's been coming with me and he takes a little pissy landing net handle about that long and he's really struggling to net the fish. But because I use a telescopic one, obviously it's convenient for carrying around with me. I just use one of the 3-metre Monster X ones. It's convenient for me to carry around. But, you know, should I hook a fish, I can obviously slide it out and I've got a 3-metre handle. So I know you might think, oh God, but it's really important because then, you know, anyone who's fished for chub in the past will know they're desperate to get under your own bank. And obviously having the length to actually get the fish before it dives under is really important. So I take my 10-foot rod, I take my landing net obviously, and then the only thing I take is I've got a little cool bag and it's got a tiny little bits bag in it and then it's got my bait. And basically the bits I'm carrying, I take some split shot because I'm link ledgering with a little split shot link. I take some swivels to make my link out of, but I'll show you that in a minute. I take some of these little beauties that loads of people have asked about, these little flat-ended, we're going to call them stops. They're going to be brilliant. And then I take, after a bit of experimentation, I found a size 8 KKH. I haven't lost a fish yet on one of them. I can see there's a situation where you might need a 6, but for the most part, this size 8 has been brilliant. And that's all I take. I just take a few little bits and pieces. I took a bit more to start with, but I've literally just simplified everything. So as far as the setup's concerned, obviously a link ledger is like the traditional way of catching these chub, and with good reason. It's deadly, and I didn't really want to stray too far away from that. But at first I was using like hook lengths and that, but I have actually found fishing straight through to be more effective. So all I've got on my line, I've got a little, it's one of these, it's a little size 14 diamond eye swivel, if you can see that. And I've got that running on my main line. To that I've just literally looped some line through the swivel and then pinched on, in this case, two swan shots. And then if I need more, obviously I'll pinch a few more shot on. Some days you need like 4 or 5 swan to hold bottom, but at the moment the river's just come down after a flood and 2 swan holds bottom lovely. And that is it. And now I've got one of them stops on there on my main line, just a little stop, a rubber stop, any sort of gripper style stop will do. And then I've just got, like say, 5 pound sinking feeder mono straight through to that size 8 KKH. Now what I do, I put the line through the eye and then I tie it on as I would a spade end hook. So I'm still getting the line coming through the eye is like a knotless knot, but it means I can obviously change my hook throughout the session. I noticed like Rob uses hook lengths because he wants to use a knotless knot, but I found that this super simple setup is better, in my opinion anyway, because you got no weak points, and you don't want weak points when you're fishing for these chub, trust me. So yeah, I leave quite a long tag on my hook length because, like I say, when I hook them, I literally try and drag the fish out of the snags and out of the cover. Don't give them an inch. So that just allows for a bit of knot slippage if it happens. Like I say, I've got my stop. Now the distance between my hook and the stop is quite interesting because I've played around with really long tails. I've played around with short ones because you do miss a few bites when you're chub fishing. That is one thing that did my head in to start with. But now I've come up with this. I don't know how long it really is. Basically, I've got in my head, it's on the keeper ring of my rod, just that far past my first eye, and I think it's probably 50 centimetres. Any longer than that and I seem to miss bites, and any shorter than that I either don't get a bite or I miss it. So this seems to have been the perfect sort of compromise, and to be honest, since I've switched to this super simple setup, my catch rate has gone through the roof. Like I say, just that, I think having the swivel on the line is super free running. You don't get any resistance, and I think that's so important for chub. And then obviously a nice big hook to prick them. Now, a bit on that, one thing when I first started, I was using 1.5 ounce tips. I was using a fixed link lead. I was probably using a bit more lead than I needed. And I just want to talk about that because for the first 3 or 4 sessions, it was doing my head in with missed bites. So because you only get one chance really in each swim to go in, get your rattle like that, and then miss it, and then have to walk and move off and go find another swim is soul destroying, trust me. So it was doing my head in, and I spoke to Gary Knowles, who's he's a coram angler, who's just an awesome specimen angler, and I asked him for some advice, and he gave me lots of great advice, so thank you very much for that, Gary. The first one was actually holding your rod rather than using a rod rest. Now, I've tried that, and I just can't, I don't know if I'm patient enough or what, but I don't know, it just doesn't seem right to me. But what I have done, I still use a rod rest, but I feed a big bow into my line, so that obviously takes a lot of resistance, so the contact isn't straight onto the tip. I've reduced my tip. I've got 1 ounce in at the moment, but I wouldn't hesitate to drop to 1/2 ounce. I really wouldn't. The key is when that first bang comes, there needs to be then some slack in the setup for the bite to develop. If you get that bang and nothing happens, your setup's wrong, in my opinion, because now I've got it right. I can see the difference, and what happens, it's just the same when you're bream fishing and that. Now I get this bang, which obviously is the chub either ejecting the bait or taking it in or whatever. So you get the bang, and then because there's enough slack and lack of resistance in my setup, the tip will then go over slow or fast, you know what I mean? You'll get a proper bang, 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 signifies the fish is there and probably got it on, and then the tip goes. Whereas before I was just getting me bang, 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 and nothing had happened, and you're just reeling no bait on. So lightening my tips off and using that free running setup has been massive. And I know it's all trivial this, but at the end of the day, we want to catch as many fish as we can, and I think I've got it down now, especially on the venue I'm fishing. You know, I'm doing really well now. I'm not missing many chances at all now. You're still going to miss a few because chub are a nightmare, but I've definitely reduced it. So that's that. Last thing to touch on is bait, because I think that's important as well. A lot of anglers use cheese paste. Now, I don't know if it's just the venue or a confidence thing, but I've not had much success on cheese paste yet. I've tried it on numerous occasions. I think the problem is because I've got confidence with bread, I always go in my favoured swims with bread first, and I'm sure if I chuck cheese paste in, I'd probably catch them, you know, on cheese paste. But because I'm so confident in bread, it probably forms to the back of the queue. So I always carry it with me. Because I've been told that the bigger chub especially like it. So I've got it. I've just mixed a bit of blue cheese, cheddar, breadcrumbs together. Made a really soft paste, and I keep it with me at all times. It stinks beautiful now, really strong smelling, and I'm sure it'll get me out of jail one day. So, but there's 2 baits that have really come to the fore. If the river's carrying colour, any colour whatsoever, and you just think the visibility is too low, then a nice stinky piece of pepperami. Rob gave me this. He buys it for his kids. Wotton gave me this, and I caught some fish on this when the conditions were atrocious. The other weekend, the river was belting through. It was up, raging through, and a little 10mm piece of this was brilliant. I just used the same setup, didn't hair rig it or anything like that. I just nicked a piece on, really lightly hooked. Smells beautiful, really strong. and it got us bites. Rob caught some fish on that as well, so that's a nice little bait. I'm sure a piece of luncheon meat would be just as good, but that is convenient, isn't it? And then the only other bait that I've caught everything on pretty much is bread. Now, at first I was just using sliced bread, but I was missing bites, and me being me, I'm looking to analyse everything. And one common factor was the fact that even when I was striking hard, my bread was still on, and I just don't think that's right. So I obviously big fan of the YouTube, so I was going on YouTube and looking at other anglers chubbing videos, and the common theme, and I always used to remember watching Matt A's videos, and he'd always have one of these, a proper loaf of bread, and that is the best chub bait you could ever have. That is just beautiful, and it just amazes me how much difference this has made to my fishing. Rob can't get his head around it, but it is definitely the way to catch a chub. So what I do, I take a normal sliced loaf, just a cheap one, and I use that to mash up. So I just dunk it in the bread, in some water, in a little bowl, mash it up, quite big pieces, and that is my feed. If I need to feed, I'll feed that bread mash. What I found is putting 3 balls in a swim, leaving it for 15 minutes, and coming back. Generally, when you chuck over it, you get one first chuck. But on the hook, this stuff is the best. So all I do, I just rip off the end, and then you've got this beautiful sort of soft bread in the middle, and I just gently tease the bread off, making a conscious effort not to flatten it at all, and then I just sort of feed my hook around it and sort of hook the bread on, so it's ever so lightly hooked, and it's never on when I reel in, which I think is so important. I know it's on long enough to get me a bite, but importantly, it's off, so I think that helps setting the hook when I'm striking. And I think the fish probably digest it a bit easier as well. So it's got me thinking a lot actually for my commercial fishing, this beauty. Rob's been catching a few on crust actually, but I haven't. I've not got a lot of confidence in crust yet. A nice big, and I mean a big piece, big old piece of flake like that. Don't know, like a camera lens cover. Like, I don't know. It's like 250p pieces, I'd say, has been the one. And just like I say, feeding the hook into it, and that has been the bait. Under Matt A's advice, I keep it in a plastic bag. Definitely seems to improve it. It goes like a rubbery texture, so I buy a couple at a time from the local bakery, and it just goes in the back of my van until I need it, because obviously it stays fresh. I'm not bothered about it being peak freshness, but because I don't take the end off it, it just stays like that in my van. And that is it. That is as simple as it needs to be. Obviously, I've taken this down a bit more of a serious route than most people are just like doing it as a little like thing to waste a bit of time or go fishing. But I've sort of wanted to do well at it, like I do with everything, and obviously fine-tuned everything, and the result has been there. I've been steadily getting towards my target. I've been catching loads of fish. Like, I had 9 one week. One session, 9 in an hour and a half fishing, which is just incredible. All on different swims as well. I was just hopping along, moving down the river, catching a chub here, there and everywhere. But now I found, and it's almost like I see where these big carp anglers get it now, because it's almost like a big jigsaw puzzle. You sort of, every time you go, you learn a bit more about the stretch and the venue. And what's happened is I've ended up finding where these big fish are, and I've managed to hone my approach so that literally I only have to be there 15 minutes to get my chance. So I've been pulling up, walking to the spot. You know, it's a bit of a tab, but getting to the spot, feeding it, and I've found that on this particular swim, if I feed and follow it in with my up bait, I catch one straight away. And that was the case when I caught my biggest fish yet, this 5 pound 2 ounce lovely chub. And when you see the size of the river, you would think there's not them big fish in there, but they're in there, trust me. And it was just like everything had come together the other day when I caught this 5 pounder. Basically, I've fed my bait, I've got there, I've chucked in, my tip's gone over, everything's perfect, and I've got my 5 pound 2 ounce target fish. Just brilliant, and that is me done now for that river. You know, I've had 31 chub out of that stretch now, and I just think that it's time to move on to something new now. So that has been brilliant. I've loved every minute of it. It's been the most enjoyable fishing I've done in a long, long time. It's not. I'm not going to say it's made me fall in love with fishing again, because I always love my fishing, but it has made me fall in love with fishing again. And I don't mean match fishing. I love my match fishing, but just going fishing and enjoying being outside and it's like hunting. You know, you're hunting for your fish. So it's been brilliant. So now I've moved on to pastures new. Next challenge is a 6-pounder. So like I say, I'm not going to video it or anything like that, because I want to keep it enjoyable, really. I just want to do my own thing. So I've joined Wellingborough District Neen Angling Club, which control most of the river around here, and I just think that gives me a chance of catching a big one. So hopefully we'll have some nice chub fishing over the next few weeks, but finding them is going to be the biggest thing. I've spent a long time on Google Maps already trying to find some fish or likely looking spots, and I think I've identified a few spots where I feel like look similar to where I've just been fishing. So I've got that in my head to take forward, if you know what I mean. And that'll be that. So bit of a long-winded one for what is a simple tactic, but I just thought it'd be nice for you just to see. And if you do fancy having a go at this over the Christmas holidays or over the next few months when, you know, matches are pretty pants, let's be honest, then hopefully a few of these pointers will be really helpful. So the key ones are: bread will always get you bites, resistance-free setup with that sliding link ledger, use as little weight down the line as possible, and do your homework before you go. And then your sessions don't need to be excessively long. So thank you very much, guys. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you again soon.